This is the historic Srinagar city. Demolished, marred, mutilated and shattered. The lifeline of this city, the river Jhelum, woke up like a water monster and laid the beloved city to waste. The rising waters became Kashmir's renegades, defying gravity, dancing to their own tunes, resisting the authority of humans, encroached everywhere, and eventually won. The city is in a state of shock. Archives suggest that this is the worst calamity ever recorded in the history of Kashmir. A water paradise is deluged with water. The Valley of Kashmir is a basin bounded on every side by lofty mountains. Jhelum is the largest and longest river of the sub-Himalayan region of Kashmir. This serpentine river of the Venice of East and its numerous tributaries flow down from the mountains and traverse the entire valley. It runs a total course of 724 kilometers. Of this, 241 kilometers are within the Kashmir Valley, 162 within what now constitutes the other part of Kashmir, and the remaining portion of 321 kilometers in Pakistan. The Vitasta, as it was called in olden days, Hydaspes by the Greeks and Veth by the Kashmiris, has an intimate relationship with the life of the people. But rivers change their moods with the seasons and alter their courses without warning. In past, Kashmir has witnessed devastations due to the floods in Jhelum. Worst floods in 879 AD are recorded in the history of Jhelum. From 1903 till 2006, a number of devastating floods have hit the valley, leaving behind a trail of miseries, diseases and famine. But as recently as 2010, the Flood Control Department formulated a dire but accurate warning on the state's summer capital being flooded by an intense spell of rain. The conclusion of the DPR reads:
The flood status reported here and above sends an urgent and a very serious wake-up warning for the state government, and we have to act fast, being in a do-or-die situation. In case the proposal is again given a deaf ear, the damages to the life and property are likely to be colossal and beyond our imagination, especially in Srinagar city.
The report was uncannily spot on.
This flood was coming, we knew. We knew it as early as 2010 based on the flood probable analysis of flood probability. And when it came, I think we were not prepared for it.
Wednesday, 3rd September 2014. It all started in Met Office on 3rd September 2014. Sonam Lotus, Director Met Office Srinagar, noticed western disturbance over J&K. He wasted no time in setting the alarm bells ringing.
After analyzing all the model products, number one, the available meteorological data and the upper air data of Jammu and Kashmir, we concluded that Jammu and Kashmir is going to experience very heavy rainfall in coming days. Instantly, we decided that without wasting time, we must issue heavy rainfall warning.
With rain showing no signs of respite, small streams, rivers, lakes started swelling throughout the Kashmir Valley.
The president of flood manual was that every year they would formulate a flood protection group. and the engineers would get their orders who were posted in their normal duties in their departments at different places. They would get their orders right at the start of the year that if flood comes, your posting is here. As soon as the alert is sounded, you are supposed to come to the such and such control room. And the control rooms would be established all along River Jhelum.
On fourth morning, the newspaper headlines warned of flood threat looming over Kashmir. Subsequently, in early morning, the Jhelum was flowing above the danger mark, both at Sangam and Ramunshi Bagh. The gauge at Sangam read 28.5, 7.5 feet above the danger mark of 21. At Ramunshi Bagh in Srinagar, it was 3 feet above the danger mark. Anantnag was receiving very heavy rainfall, which at the end of the day reached 180 mm in 24 hours, against the normal rainfall of 1.8. Similarly, Pahalgam received the highest rainfall of 58.6 in 24 hours, against the normal rainfall of 2.7. South Kashmir was getting flooded at many places, and the threat on Srinagar was visible. In past, Jhelum used to be breached to allow waters to flow to Kandizal, so that the levels of Jhelum reduced.
Kandizal basically is automatic flow section there. It was at a lower level, this Kandizal, that once the water level will go above this thing, it would automatically sip it to this Kandizal area, and this whole water body, it would get submerged and discharged into the main river Jhelum through the city, would get automatically reduced. But with the passage of time and urbanization in that area and other interferences, the level of that spill level, crest level of that has been raised with the passage of time.
In almost all devastating flood situations, the timely induced breach considerably reduced water discharge by more than half from Sangam to Ramunshi Bagh. As per the data available, the worst flood discharge of River Jhelum, monitored at Sangam and Ramunshi Bagh, was in the year 1959 with 1,20,000 cusecs and 48,300 cusecs at Ramunshi Bagh.
I have fought 1959 July flood. So was the Tabazan flood. Waller was the HMD Nishu fueling station right side in Shalting Junction. Utam was what Atache Shikai Kazan. Sunwar Pursari. Shahar was taken care of in advance.
As per past experience, timely breach at Kandizal could have considerably reduced the water level in Jhelum. But the government was indecisive and gave in to all kinds of pulls and pressures, both administrative and political.
Somebody called me from Kandizal in the morning, there is some water going seeping somewhere. Very responsible person. So I thought, ye to theek ho raha hai, this is good. So I was in touch with the army man. I had fixed that whatever had to be done. But in the evening, he said that we can't do it in the evening, we'll do it in the morning. And morning we got the message that it's already done. So we had not to do that.
An army handout said that the army was ready with its engineers for breaching, but got no request from the state.
Kandizal always used to be the first thing that they would be breached intentionally to safeguard city. And intentional breaching is to be done much before the peak comes. When you are anticipating the peak so that you don't allow the building up of that peak in the city of Srinagar while it is passing. Now, if the peak comes and breaches it of its own, that will not have the effect of, channelizing the water. That will then go, water will go wherever it will find its way.
In Srinagar, people were curiously watching the level of Jhelum, and the bridges were almost overtopping. Associated Media team was documenting flood scenario around Srinagar areas, and people had already started evacuating. On Friday morning, 3 dangerous things were happening simultaneously. After a century, gauge at Sangam was getting submerged. The gauge at Ramunshi Bagh was rising at 10 centimeters per hour, and Asham gauge was rising even faster.
It doesn't need a rocket science. The moment you see that the levels are rising. The moment you see that there is an intense rainfall that is coming and it is continuing for a few days, 1 or 2 days, the first step that has to be taken is to drain off water from the pools of the water as much as you can. Now, the first step should have been that gates of Dal Gate should have been opened because river had not risen here that time. Dal area also should have been deflated so that it can take some water. River Jhelum, if they saw that there are flows much higher than that, they should have immediately downstream in Sonawari. Sonawari is a low-lying area, that is also a floodplain. They should have breached to deflate the river so that the coming peak which has been generated can be managed within the existing levels of the bund.
By now, South Kashmir was deluged and devastated by the floods. It was no more accessible.
We had no connectivity to South Kashmir. The Neva bridge also collapsed. We lost that. Then we had one small connectivity through Wahibug bridge. That was the only connectivity left, and unfortunately on 5th evening, that too got washed away.
While all eyes were on Jhelum, Dudhganga Nala, which usually discharges into flood-spill channel, overflowed its banks during the night of 4th and 5th September. Lalnagar, Chanapora, Barzula, B&J Hospital and Bulbul Bagh got inundated. There was confusion and chaos in the city.
When we heard that there is water is spilling into Bone and Joint Hospital area, so it was shocking. We have a gate opening down below Barzula which connects Dudhganga Nala to spill channel. That was blocked, that was closed. Or any even a junior engineer or junior worker there should have thought that we will agree if the gate is not opened, we will give a cut to the embankment. I feel the deluge would not have taken place in this Bhagat area.
No efforts were seen on ground to grapple with the ferocity of the flood as the water level of the Jhelum started rising rapidly. Though with every hour the choices for the government were getting limited, still experts feel if action would have taken place, loss would have reduced substantially. Saturday, 6th September 2014. In the 5-day spell, Shopian district received 2953%, Kulgam 1850%, Anantnag 1687% and Pulwama 2380% excess rainfall over normal.
We anticipated that it will be raining for so many days, but we didn't anticipate that it will be so many cloud bursts in almost all the catchment areas, which abruptly increased the levels.
The theory that there was a cloud burst, I doubt, I cannot say, but my data suggests there was heavy rainfall and it is because of accumulation of all this rainfall.
On Saturday afternoon, rain stopped for first time. Though the gauge at Ramunshi Bagh started receding just a shade, but this was not to be construed as warning signs of impending danger are over yet. In fact, this should have served as an indication of the ferocity of the ensuing disaster and a sure sign of an upstream breach or inundation.
I think it's over now. Whatever is coming now, it is stagnant for 4-5 hours. It was just half an inch here and there, and in fact it got down also 1 inch.
Srinagar gauge cannot be taken as authentic unless you find changes in the Sangam gauge, because Sangam is the obligatory point for Asham also. And it is just possible if Sangam was rising and Srinagar had some relief, that could have been due to the breaches which may have taken place en route to Srinagar.
When on 4th September, gauge started rising steeply at 1200 hours at Sangam, it should have been treated critical by the experts in charge of command and control for the floods. The same rise in the gauge got reflected at Ramunshi Bagh at 1500 hours on Saturday, after the lapse of more than 2 days. Thus, for flood waters to reach Srinagar from Sangam, A 48-hour window period was provided. This was enough time to evacuate people from low-lying areas, deploy special response teams and arrange supplies.
So far as civil administration is concerned, we got announcements made by the flood control department that wherever there is danger, they should ask people to vacate.
It should have been warning after every minute. Please leave, create a panic, sort of a panic, which government did not want basically. I think that was the reason. They did not want to create a panic. But we had to create the panic for the safety of the people. We had to create a panic, and by force we had to evacuate. Use force. The way we implement our curfew orders. It is by force.
The deluge that first submerged South Kashmir districts on September 3rd and 4th went on to devastate Srinagar in the intervening night of September 6th and 7th. Jhelum breached the embankment at Athwajan, Galandhar, Pampur, Rajbagh and at 6 places in Shupora during night, but no flood management was brought into force by the system.
Manuals were not forward, flood duty was not being done, people were not knowing where they are posted. There was, you see, pre-flood, during flood and post-flood, the administration seems to have been drowned itself.
Sunday, 7th September 2014. On Sunday morning, the scene of city was horrific. Flood waters were violent, ruthless and gruesome, destroying whatever came its way. Houses, boundary walls, shops, structures falling like a pack of cards. Cars were floating in all directions. Water was dragging all kinds of stuff, everything dear to people. People were confused, astonished, unable to decide what to do. The river was in hunt of prized possessions. The residential areas of Panthachok, Sonowar, Indiranagar, Shupora, Rajbagh, Gogjibagh, Jawaharnagar, Barzula, Haidarpora, Pirbagh all seemed as one water body. The Jhelum waters spilled over the embankments along many places on the Bund in the central business unit of Srinagar city. Water was gushing in the main business hub Lal Chowk, Residency Road, Karan Nagar, Hari Singh High Street. Since government failed to open the gate at Ramunshi Bagh, the roaring Jhelum changed its course towards the Dal Lake and breaking the lake's lock regulatory gates. Voluminous water forced its way into the lake and raising its level to 21 feet. In less than 12 hours, the most vibrant city had been turned to driftwood, mud and silt. Everything got trapped by rising flood waters, causing land surface to be submerged underwater. People who had any opportunity were migrating to safer places, and those who did not started looking for rescue. Muhammad Shafi Kakru, a resident of Rajbagh, was in his home with his family when water started entering his area and then his home. With walls and houses collapsing around his home and level rising, he got stuck in his house.
Water was coming like an ocean, and everything, whether it was a block, whether it was a kitchen outside the house, whether it was a cowshed, whether it was a store, or the boundary walls that were coming down. I was having with me my wife and 3 daughters.
Like Muhammad Shafi Kakru, tens of thousands of people went to upper stories or on rooftops calling for help. The desperation was such, people even cut tin sheets off their roof to save their life. Faced with certain death in Deluged Rajbagh, ETV's Rifat Abdullah recorded his last message after dialing his high-end contacts for help turned futile.
जहाँ मुझे लगा कि कोई हेल्प कर सकते हैं तो मैंने उनको भी कॉल की। मैंने कहा आज फंसे हैं, आज कुछ कीजिए, हमारी ज़िंदगी बचाए, हमारी फैमिली भी फंसी हुई है, हम पूरे फंसे हुए हैं यहाँ पे। तो कहीं से उम्मीद नज़र नहीं आ रही थी क्योंकि कई घंटे गुजर गए। जब मुझे लगा कि 2 मंजिल कवर हो गए, रफली 20 फीट अबव पानी चला गया, तो अब मुझे बचने की कोई सूरत नहीं लगी। मैंने अपने कैमरामैन से कहा कि आज हम आखिरी PTC रिकॉर्ड करते हैं।
It was perhaps for the first time that Jammu and Kashmir had become incommunicado during a natural calamity. Cars and trucks were submerged. Communication systems failed on a massive scale. People were desperately awaiting news of loved ones who were still trapped. The government had no capacity to deal with a flood of this scale. It had no command and control system in place. No official, no control room, no television. Radio was the only link, but that also stopped by 7th afternoon.
They sincerely believed that it was safe. That is why most of them were sleeping at their residences, official residences, and some of them were actually rescued in these earth removers.
The tide sparked panic among the hundreds of patients, attendants and staff in many hospitals in Srinagar. Dr. Adil, who was on duty in SMHS hospital, recalls the chaos when waters started entering the premises and eventually inundated the place.
Believe me, words cannot describe the feelings. You cannot describe the scene when you entered the hospital. There were cries, there were chaos, there were moans all around. There were 3 or 4 dead bodies there in the hospital, and there was no one to carry them out. There were people who were knowing that death is imminent, death is going to come to their patients at any time. But unfortunately, we did not have anything in our hand.
Hospitals were rendered literally dysfunctional. Equipment worth crores was in water. Patients and attendants took refuge on higher floors in these hospitals, which had no power supply, were running short on food, water, and even oxygen cylinders for infants. Survival of patients, doctors, and attendants was at stake.
There was no light, medications, IV injectables, everything it was given under candles. There was nothing to eat. The dextrose solutions, glucose solutions, which is normally present in hospital, it was given to attendants as well as to doctors so that they can survive on that.
Facebook was getting loaded with all types of messages. People in Kashmir and outside Kashmir were getting worried about the well-being of their loved ones in Kashmir. It created a panic situation in all the Kashmiris in every part of the world. In the face of an absent government, it has been locals at the forefront of rescue and relief efforts. Having less than 100 boats for 7 lakh trapped people, compounded with total breakdown of chain of command. Youth on their own accord built makeshift rafts and organized inflatable boats. Sajjad, a lawyer by profession, was watching prevailing chaos around the city. His desperation for a boat forced him to fly to Delhi.
I saw people crying on the roads. I saw police helpless. I saw women crying to get their children out. And there was no help being provided by anyone. I rushed to Delhi at 4:30 by a 4:30 flight. I came back with a boat next day morning 7:30 flight.
It took courage and creativity to transform empty water tanks, plastic bottles, wood planks, mattresses to float thousands of marooned people to safety.
An open air show was there. You should give credit to these people who knew that when major floods come, it is not only the government that floats. There are rafts which float. There are baskets which float. Water tanks which float. People used different type of systems to get people out of the marooned areas.
Bablu, a plumber by profession, got hold of a boat. With no experience of rowing, he started rescuing in Jawaharnagar area.
तम साल बह गर द्रावस तहरते हुए निकला मैं बाहर तक मतलब नेबर तान द्रावस बह छांट वाया माया तम पे पे पत शिकार तौर पत मे बुथ आव सह न्यू मे कह लुक कड़ कचो मकानों मज मतलब यम डैमेज गसन लायक पत थ तम कंक्रीट मकानन मज पत कड़ तम वार वार.
Besides shrieks and wails from women and frightened children from every possible direction in the flood-hit areas, the other sounds one could vividly hear were created by the helicopters hovering above in the now bright blue skies. As choppers started filling Srinagar skies, government was stargazing. So were the people counting flying machines. By Sunday evening, many people were still trapped in their unsafe homes. There was no electricity, no food, no water.
The nights were horrible. There were cries during the nights when the houses were collapsing. People were crying. It was a sleepless night. Not for one day, 4 nights we have spent in that water. And we thought some snake would come, house may collapse. There was no electricity. We were waiting for the morning to come.
Monday, 8 September 2014. People were still trapped in their houses without food, water and medicine. And for those who were rescued, impromptu relief camps were set up throughout Srinagar, where food, clothing and medicine donated by people across valley got distributed. Community langars were established in all areas that were not affected by floods. Medical camps were organized and makeshift shelters were provided to people. Sajjad was back from Delhi with boats. He along with his friends ventured into hard-hit areas to rescue families still stranded in their homes.
We rescued people from Hyderpura, we rescued people from Tengpura, Batmalu. We visited Lal Chowk area and we saw around 65 tourists stuck in the Yatri Niwas. We rescued all of them. After that we proceeded to a hotel, JKTDC owned hotel. There we saw around 80 tourists stuck. We rescued them. But the most close to my heart was Raj Dulari Rani, living here at the Exchange Road. She was around 82 years old. She was alone for 6 days without access to food and she could not walk. She was pale yellow and we decided to go there. The ground floor was submerged. On the first floor there were grills made of iron. I broke down that window and then I got that lady out.
There was not a single official of any kind visible in a city centre, waterlogged with water, sewage and the carcasses of cows and dogs. It was only on 16 September, 10 days after the floods hit Kashmir, the Divisional Commissioner convened a meeting to assess the situation. Still, large parts of Srinagar were laying under water. There were empty homes and crowded relief camps. People were trying to locate their loved ones and their belongings. Boats were still moving in places like Rajbagh, Jawaharnagar, Kamarwari, Bemina. There were no spades, water pumps, bulldozers. People again of their own started cutting embankments to allow waters out from their colonies.
Areas have remained inundated for 16-20 days. These our structures are not designed to be in water for 16 days. What will happen to these houses? They have already lost their life.
It was only after 3 weeks, when water receded, that people could comprehend the damages to their abandoned assets. The calamity, worst in the century, caused colossal losses to life and massive damage to properties. Over 300 people lost their lives across J&K. The damage caused to housing, business sectors, public institutions, hospitals, education institutes and crops is over ₹1 trillion. The flood damaged over 3.50 lakh structures, including 2,53,000 homes, and affected 12 lakh families. Colonies wore a deserted look, and thriving markets seemed war-hit streets. Almost all the institutions, civil secretariat, judiciary, law enforcement machinery, state legislature, and most of the other offices were troubled by murky waters. By all accounts, it's the greatest deluge to hit Kashmir, leaving a trail of debris and destruction.
I will call deluge of Srinagar a man-made disaster.
It's human negligence in this case.
Why shouldn't they be made responsible?
This all was about bad arithmetic at the policy level.
We are made to sit like ducks, waiting for the disaster.
I think you must have not seen any sector during this flood.
It can come anytime, floods. We cannot stop.
In Kashmir, floods are now going to be a very critical issue because of government's mismanagement and public apathy. The river and its channels have been encroached and choked. The carrying capacity of Jhelum has reduced to half, whereas the flood spill channel is in a dilapidated state. Today, Jhelum and the flood channel has a joint capacity of 60,000 cusecs, whereas the recent floods were recorded almost double of this. Government not only has failed in creating additional water channels for floods, but has also time and again failed to save existing channels and embankments called bunds.
There was a project submitted to Government of India for 2,200 crores. But there were so many objections in that and their queries and that. I tried to resolve them. It takes some time.
We have a continuous dialogue with the state government wherein we requested them to provide certain amount of additional information. However, the information was not really coming in easily. Simultaneously, in order to see that at least the immediate problems can be completed, we even sanctioned an amount of somewhere around say 90 crores or so, and after that 90 crores were sanctioned, we had after quite some time, in fact that 90 crore was to be spent in a year, probably it took almost 2 years, and then also we have still not got the utilization certificate of that much amount. So really speaking, the money cannot, throwing money at a problem doesn't really help.
During Maharaja's rule, riding a bicycle on the river bund would invite a fine. The significance of strong embankment is no more a priority. Authorities themselves laid a massive pipeline on Residency Road bund, which resulted in many breaches all through the embankment. Major stretch of Jhelum's embankments were also damaged during the road widening at the Panta Chowk-Sempura stretch, overlooking Jhelum.
That road was cut, and there is a lot of correspondence with the R&B, and that I have. In fact, that was done at this district level. But there is a lot of correspondence with Chief Engineer R&B also that this will be fatal. You immediately plug it.
Who says that at Panchuk the bund was cut? The widening, the Panchuk, it was a big hurdle so far as the movement of traffic to entire South Kashmir is concerned, to Jammu is concerned. But without disturbing the bunds, you must have seen that there is a huge, so far as the length of the length of bund is concerned. It's quite wide up to the roadside, and nobody had asked, nobody has ever tried from the government side to weaken the bunds.
A recent study titled 2014 Extreme Floods in Kashmir, Genesis, Magnitude and Correctives has revealed that the railway line might be responsible for the higher levels of the inundation observed in some areas of the Jhelum floodplains around Srinagar city.
This caused it as a restriction on both sides, एक साइड तो रेजिंग ऑफ द रोड, नेशनल हाईवे जो 4 लेन बनाई, that acts as one blockade, another side railway track. So naturally water had no place to get distributed in a larger area. It came simply rushing down towards Srinagar.
The area which used to be inundated has got inundated, but the areas which would get say 8 feet of water got just 4 feet. Maybe the openings in the floods in that railway line. So it took some time, maybe that acted as a guide wall, but that's to be analyzed.
Although the recent history suggests that after the disastrous events, things return to a new normal quickly, but the scientists warn that we are on way for the same fate. Experts agree that it's not a matter of if, but when another large-scale disaster will occur somewhere in the state. From policymakers to each individual, one should understand, when disaster looms, doing nothing is not an option. At the moment, no time and effort was spent assigning culpability for a lack of preparation, decision-making, bureaucratic tie-ups and political initiative to individuals and agencies. No such investigations have taken place, no heads rolled in the official machinery. In absence of an efficient disaster management, we may suffer the same sort of meltdown in the next natural or man-made disaster. Kashmir as we know it today is doomed. It's not a question of how anymore. It's a question of why. The devastation of our environment during last decades has no parallel in Valley's entire 5,000-year-old history. Glaciers are decreasing at an alarming rate of 0.04 square kilometers every year. Loss of water bodies had its bearing on local microclimate, resulting in rise in mean temperature. We have lost nearly 50% of the water bodies and wetlands. Since 1992, forest cover of the valley decreased by 10%. The built-up area for Srinagar city has grown by about 29.20%, nearly 3 times the rate of population growth since 1972. There is no serious thinking, no serious planning about any of this going on at the state level. As we saved ourselves from the devastating September 2014 deluge, it's time we labor with equal passion and seriousness to defend our environment, to have Jhelum flowing free again, ducks and geese raising their young in the backwaters, and fishing opportunities would be the finest possible tribute to the Kashmir and Kashmiriyat, and a priceless gift for our children.